This is a day of exceptional happiness and significance in the life of this university. And I'm going to say what I understand the source of that happiness and significance to be. But first, I'd like to just draw attention to a few people who we are very, very fortunate to have with us. Julian Abele, Jr., I am so, so proud to have you here today. And all the very numerous members of the Abele family who are able to join us, who are in the front row and will be at the reception. What a treat. I know Mayor Bell is on his way, and I thank him and other city fathers who will be joining us. I also take note of the fact that Congressman Butterfield, our very own congressman, the head of the Black Congressional Caucus, caused a resolution to be passed in the House of Representatives honoring Julian Abele and the naming of Abele Quad today. That's great. And then I would just give a little shout out to the committee that advised on what would be the best way to memorialize Julian Abele on campus. Tallman Trask chaired that group, and I won't name all the members, but I am going to give a shout out to two of them. Phil Freelon, the architect, among other things, of the African American History Museum in Washington. And if you're not the other name I mentioned, too bad for you, but I am going straight to Oscar Dantzler, the housekeeper of Duke Chapel, who won the Duke University medal yesterday afternoon. You guys are hard to please. Okay, humor me. Take your eyes and start at the back, start wherever you like, start at some corner and let them pass a little slowly around all the things that can be seen. And when you come to this sheet behind me, you remember what's behind it, fill that in, and then come on and continue and continue and continue until you get all the way around to the end of the West Campus of Duke University. We are at the heart of Duke University. This is the epicenter of Duke University. And certain things are true about the West Campus of University that are all kind of amazing and, as far as I know, unique. Most campuses started sometime and then they added and added and added over time, so they're kind of a hodgepodge of buildings. But the whole West Campus of Duke University was conceptualized and most of it executed as one single act of construction. So our campus has a kind of coherence, a kind of identity that's very rare in the history of universities. So that's unusual. Then second, what was produced here, I mean, I'm sorry, let's just acknowledge it. This is the most beautiful college campus in America. If you went to Duke, when you think of Duke, you think of the West Campus of this university. And the number of people who tell me that they chose to come to Duke because, having been admitted here and elsewhere, they came to campus for a visit, and as soon as they drove up to the West Campus, they saw it, and the question was answered, I'm going there. I want to live in that place. That looks like such a great place to be. Two facts then you have heard from me. One, a continuous, coherent design of a campus. Two, the most beautiful campus of all. And now I pass to the really extraordinary fact, which is this. When James B. Duke gave the money to create a university out of Trinity College, he reserved the right to pick the architect, which was not an unreasonable thing on his part. He'd worked with an architectural firm in Philadelphia called the Trumbauer firm, and he chose them, and Mr. Trumbauer chose his best in-house architect to do the Duke West Campus. This was Julian Abele. This was Julian Abele, the first black graduate of the Penn Architecture program. So let's stop and think. This university was built in the depths of segregation in the very segregated part of the United States. The university itself obeyed the laws of segregation. The doors of this school were closed to black students and they were closed to black faculty. And in the entire region of the country that surrounded us was characterized by the belief that people were systematically unequal on grounds of race. And they lived in a social system designed to make it appear obvious that people were unequal on grounds of race by creating systems that tried to make people inferior. People were kept from holding the high positions that would make obvious that you were a remarkable person. People were kept from getting the kind of training that typically qualifies people to rise in the world. And yet in that, the very middle of that America, that a system of segregation, this magnificent, this beautiful campus was thrown up as the work of a black architect, Julian Abele. To me, what this means is the beauty of this campus disproves everything that was then held up as true in this region of this country. And the beauty of this campus disproves the general proposition, because let's be true, let's be honest, America has a particular genius for certain forms of racism in its history, and yet humans all around the world have found a million ways to try to identify people as different from their other and make them inferior. And when you stand and look at the beauty of this campus, it reminds you those are falsehoods about the promise of humans and their self-delusions and self-deceptions and sources of nothing good for the people who entertain them. Lift every voice and sing, it will play on the chorus when we're done. So you have three facts: coherent campus, exquisite campus, designed by a black architect in the middle of segregation, and yet that fact really wouldn't carry its full meaning unless the public were aware of that fact. But when this campus opened, there was no announcement that Julian Abele had been the designer of it. There were not interviews in Architecture Today with Julian Abele, right? He was the silent architect. He was in the closet as the architect of Duke University, if you could put it that way. To the best of my knowledge, here's what I learned. I got an email 2 days ago from a person named David Beltan, who worked as an admissions officer in the Duke admissions office in the late 1970s. That's you. You went to UNC, but it's okay. They have a few nice buildings too. You reading the application of a person named Julian Abele Cook III, who also wrote to me in the last 2 days, in the place where you were asked to say, do you have any alumni in your family? He said, well, I actually don't have any alumni in my family. It would have, of course, been a little hard. But I have a relation, because what is the great uncle, is this right, was Julian Abele, the person who designed the West Campus. And you said to yourself, well, how can that be, right? Since no one had ever heard this fact, as far as I know, it had never been publicized or acknowledged on this campus. You admitted him. He came to Duke. He is a loyal member of the class of 1983. He is a faculty member today at the Law School of the University of Georgia, and he sent his regrets. But it is by this means that the authorship of this university began to be known. But it took more time for it to become more widely known. I know that you, sir, came to a celebration with President Nan Cohen, I think, of one of the anniversaries of this campus, and you know that pictures of Julian Abele have hung in the lobby of the Allen Building, in the Gothic Reading Room, and elsewhere. But our thought is, we want to make the truth of the authorship of the beauty of this university such that no one visiting this campus can fail to know it. We've got a masterpiece. We're going to paint the name at the bottom of that masterpiece, the name of the artist of it. And so at the end of today, we will be going back here and we will be unveiling a plaque smack in the middle of the university, such that if you go there, you're going to see this plaque and you're going to know something. A, this is beautiful, and B, there's a history of how this came into being. I'm going to read you the plaque because I can't stand the suspense. But I only want to tell you, in classical antiquity, you can see these things if you go to see the ruins of ancient Rome. There's a kind of marker that begins with the phrase, halt traveler, siste viator, stop. I'm going to tell you something. And when I'm done telling it to you, you'll know something you didn't know, and then you're free to go on your way. Our plaque does not say that, but it seems to me it has exactly that function. You're walking along, you're talking to your friend, you finish reading your text or whatever, and then you see this gilded sign that says in large letters, Abel Quad, and then named for Julian F. Abele, the African-American architect who between 1924 and 1950 designed all the surrounding buildings. Take your eyes and travel around. You mean some of them? No, I mean all of these buildings. And I will brag that I helped to get the line used for Christopher Wren in St. Paul's Cathedral put here because never was it more appropriate. If you seek his monument, look around. If you want to know what this campus is, this is the work of an African-American architect in the depths of segregation. If you want to know who Julian Abele was, look around. This is his work. Welcome and thanks to you all.
Before I even begin, I'd like to say that today we have 4 generations of the Abele family present for this, including the latest addition, my great-great-niece, Mackenzie. I also want to thank the Lord for providing the weather that we have, since just before we got here, we were in the hotel and it was pounding rain. I said, this is not going to be good, but it turned out to be. When I was told that I was going to have to say a few words, and it's been a long time since I've done that, I've been retired for almost 20 years, I tried to think of what I was going to say, and I also thought a little bit about how Dad would react to this situation. He would be certainly proud, without question, and he would be very uneasy because he hated to be in the limelight. And I'm going to start with talking about Dad when he graduated from Penn. As you all know, the first African-American to graduate to get a degree in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. And had a very good career there, won a lot of prizes, and so on and so forth. He graduated in 1902, and there are several years that were a little difficult to understand what happened because he did not start working with Horace Trumbauer until 1906. But we do know that he was the dean of the School of Architecture at University of Pennsylvania, took him to the Horace Trumbauer firm. And he met Horace Trumbauer, and they both hit it off right from the beginning. Horace Trumbauer was impressed by the work that he had done at the University of Pennsylvania. He had won several awards for design. And he fostered him for a trip to Europe, so that he could further his education and actually see firsthand the great architectural masterpieces that were created in the golden era in Europe, in the Renaissance, and so on and so forth. He finally, when he returned, he went out to Idaho to help his sister, Elizabeth, and then returned back home to Philadelphia. And he joined the firm in 1906. It wasn't long there before the then chief designer resigned to create his own firm, and Horace Trumbauer made him chief designer. So he was designer for Trumbauer during the golden years before the Depression, when there were many, many wonderful projects that were done, as I say, not the least of which is the one that we see before us right now. And I say this not just because I'm standing here, but as President Brodhead said, I consider it his finest work. And I've been on a lot of, I finished my career at Cornell University, which is a very nice place, but nothing to compare to Duke. I've been to Stanford and many others, and I consider this the finest campus in this country. as I say, he worked during the golden years when great projects were made, but he never received any recognition, and that is not because anybody was trying to hide him. It was the natural, the modus operandi at that time was that everything would be named for the principal or the owner of the firm, and so his name would never come up. And it wasn't until 1986 that he began to receive some recognition, and that was through primarily a cousin of mine named Susan Cook, who attended Duke University and was here during the days when they had the shanty town. And someone had written that it was a shame to have such a thing, such a so-called ugly thing located on the Duke campus. Her return, she in return wrote a letter saying that nobody realizes that it was a black architect that designed the campus at Duke, and that he was not able to come here because of the Jim Crow laws that were in effect at the time it was done. When she brought this to the attention of perhaps at Duke, nobody at Duke, or very few people at Duke, I should say, realized that Dad was involved because the firm was Horace Trumbauer that did all the work. That's how it was known. And it wasn't until they began to dig into the archives, and Bill King, who I got to know very well, was the archivist at that time when I was here, began to know indeed there was a Julian Abele, and that he was very heavily involved in the design of this campus. And they began to dig a little more, and one of the first things that happened that showed that they respected that position was when they placed his portrait in the Allen Building in a very prominent location. And shortly after that, he began to receive recognition from other places. He had two historical markers in Philadelphia for the Art Museum and the main library. He had many articles written about him in magazines like National Geographic. And it became very well known on the internet and Google, and you can look on Google and find a lot about his history. And he, as I say, began to come out of the shadows. And I've often wondered if he hoping somehow that he could see what was happening here and be able to enjoy it without feeling that he was in the limelight. After the Depression, there was very little work involved, and especially the type of work that Horace Trumbauer did, which was the very mansions of the very rich, and very buildings or campuses like Duke, and so on and so forth. But Horace Trumbauer kept him on during the Depression, paying his salary all the time, and I give him great credit for that. And in the end, as I say, he began to be recognized in many, many places, and we're very, very proud of what Duke has done to keep that recognition alive and to perhaps even provide to give more than they have up to this point. The whole family is very, very proud of this, and we give the university full credit, and all the people, many people in the administration and in the faculty and staff and students who kept this thing alive. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Duke Black alumni, thank you all for being here to celebrate the dedication of Abele Quad. For many of us within the Duke Black alumni community, this has been a long day in the making. From what started as rumors of the true architect of our iconic chapel and much of what you see on Duke's West Campus, to outright celebration and acclamation of true genius within our community. As we look around us, today is truly the day that Mr. Abele has made. You see, when I was a student from 1998 to 2002, I didn't know about Julian Abele. As a member of BSA, Students of the Caribbean, and many other organizations on campus, I should have known. However, he was simply not a part of the everyday Duke narrative. But what I did know is that the chapel's beautiful and majestic lines were comforting and something that I was always drawn to. As a member of our Duke community, it is indeed a sense of pride to know that it's in a time where Julian Abele was not welcome in Durham or at this very university. He set a tower of hope and buildings of prestige on the center of a great campus for all our students, faculty, staff, and community members to be a part of. Specifically, as a member of our Duke Black alumni family, please know it gives us continued hope and pride in the success of what is yet to come for our members. In fact, today's plaque, this dedication, and the proud ownership of Black excellence will propel our students further with a sense of great ownership in Duke's story. Finally, let today be a reminder of opportunity, that when a talented young Black man was allowed to succeed, achieve, and be supported, the greatness he does for all. Let today remind us that we must hold strong in our conviction of bringing to the light all the great works of our community with special attention to our Black alumni. Celebrate each other. Perhaps one of my favorite quotes from Mr. Abele, who is always so humble. "The lines are all Trumbauer's," he said, "the shadows are mine." Well, no longer, sir. We thank you for your shadows, your lines, and your beauty, and we welcome you into the light of Duke's campus today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As I reflect on the life of Julian Abele, there is one word that comes to mind. That one word is vision. In an era where racial relations did not allow a gifted architect to physically realize his vision, today he is honored, and on this campus we are all able to behold his magnificent work. I recently listened to a gifted elder in our community share her concerns about how we approach racial relations today. In a time of Jim Crow and segregation, the questions they were asked was, why are you here? Who are you? Do you belong? And the questions that they asked themselves were, what am I here for? What am I here to do? And what am I going to do? These are the types of questions that we should be asking ourselves today. In order to get to those answers, we must have vision. The vision to take a stand when the voices of Black women are forgotten in our conversations, in law and policy, and to take the courage to stand up and ask, who cries for the Black girl, like third-year law student Glenda DeVille? When differences arise on our way to combat police brutality against our Black brothers and sisters, between the African and African American students here at Duke, we unite with the Duke African Graduate Professional Student Association and the Black Graduate Professional Student Association to host conversations on varied perspectives across the African diaspora in the time of Black Lives Matter. As a member of the Duke community, we must rely on the visions of our ancestors to show us the way. Although our current position may not be where we want to be, if we are unafraid in combating injustice, emboldened in our commitment to inclusion, have vision of where we want to be, and we relentlessly execute that vision, we will be able to make Duke University an even better place. I just want to leave you with one final thought. This is an election year. This is an election year. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, though I have already made up my mind. But if you are not registered to vote in North Carolina, the deadline is October 14th, and early voting begins on October 20th. Our ancestors fought for the right to vote, and we have to act on that right. Exercise your right to vote. Thank you so much, Mr. Abele and your family, and thank Mr. Abele. Thank you.
On behalf of the Black Student Alliance, I would like to start by thanking you all for coming today. Now, when I write speeches, I generally like to start with a quote. The quote I'm going to share with you today is one of my favorites and is actually the way I started my Duke application essay when I applied what seems like ages ago. It's by Booker T. Washington and reads, "Success should be measured not so much by the position that one reaches in life, as by the obstacles which they have overcome while trying to succeed." As some of you may have learned today, Julian Abele graduated from University of Pennsylvania, was the chief designer in a Philadelphia architecture firm, designed the chapel and many of the buildings on Duke's campus, all while being a Black man during segregation. The feats he accomplished would be phenomenal for any individual, but once you know the story behind it, you are able to get a sense of the struggle he must have faced. His work becomes even more remarkable. For me, when I walk past the chapel, I see something that's bigger than myself. Knowing Julian Abele's life story makes me believe that I too can create something as phenomenal as the buildings that we see around us. I believe that as an architect, were Julian Abele here to witness the naming of Abele Quad and see the big area of land named after him, he would see opportunity. Opportunity to build and opportunity to grow. An area of land that is becoming the solid foundation on which we can build a better and more inclusive Duke. A Duke that acknowledges the missteps of the past and aims to remedy them for the future. As you walk past Abele Quad on your way to class and work every day, I want you to think about all of the opportunity that is at your fingertips. The opportunity to serve on that executive board or get the job you may think is out of your reach. The opportunity to apply for a competitive scholarship or speak to the distinguished professor or alumni you're too afraid to approach. President Brodhead said something during the annual African and African American reception a few years ago that really stuck with me. He spoke about how the people who have come before us have fought to break down so many barriers that we shouldn't put up imaginary barriers for ourselves and tell ourselves that an opportunity we are interested in is out of our reach. Nothing at Duke or abroad is out of your reach. This statement includes the Black Student Alliance. Even if this is the first event you're at with the Black Student Alliance, I would like to encourage you and invite you to join us for more. This ceremony is an example of the amazing things that are possible when different groups from different backgrounds come together. I believe diversity and inclusion make Duke a better place to work and to learn. We would like to take a step towards inclusion and invite you to join us after the chapel bells ring and the ceremony closes for a picnic on Abele Quad right over there. There's food for everyone and commemorative blankets for students. And I charge you to sit with someone who you haven't met and start a conversation about how we can build a stronger community together. In closing, I would like to leave you with words from a Chronicle article that was published today. Written by a first year, Leah Abrams eloquently explains the importance of correcting institutional racism and the impacts of slavery, which we are seeing today in Charlotte, Tulsa, St. Louis, and across America. She speaks about the numerous protesters in these cities who are unheard by the government and the names of many who we lost and have gone unrecognized by the media. She begs the question, how about we take the time to recognize the Julian Abeles in our city and in our towns? In recognizing past wrongs and hidden legacies, we allow ourselves an opportunity to move forward. Recognition can be our beginning. It can push us to trod down the path towards justice. Let's rename our quads, let's restate our mission, but let's not stop there.
Hello, my name is David Rubenstein. I have the honor and privilege of serving as chairman of the Board of Trustees of Duke, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, most of whom are here, I want to officially welcome everybody here and thank you for coming from long distances in many cases and suffering through a little bit of heat. Earlier, I talked to the dean of the Divinity School and asked her to pray for some good weather. She did. At the time I did that, it was raining. I recognized later that actually the rain was the tears of joy from Julian Abele, no doubt looking down on us. Earlier this week, the African American History and Culture Museum opened in Washington, D.C., and we're very privileged to have the architect of that extraordinary museum. I've been through it many times. It's a life-changing experience. I highly recommend everybody, black, white, any color, go through that because it's really the history of America. It was really proposed initially over 100 years ago by the black veterans of the northern troops in the Civil War. They proposed it in around 1915. It took over 100 years to get it done. Long overdue. Today, what we're doing here is something that's long overdue. Julian Abele has been acknowledged before, but probably not in an appropriate way. And so the university felt that we need to do something appropriate, and that's why we decided to name the quad after Julian Abele. We could have named a building, a road, something else, but the reason the quad is so important, it's the center of campus, as Dick mentioned, and every time you go on this campus, it's hard to not go through the quad, and every time you do, you're going to see Julian Abele's name there, and every time you do, hopefully you will think about what he did and think about the importance of what he did at a time that was so difficult for somebody to do that. You know, imagine what it is like sitting in Philadelphia drafting plans for a university that you can't visit and you can't go to. Imagine what that's like. And he probably never visited this campus. Today, he's no doubt looking down very favorably and thanking all of you for coming. So I hope that everybody will have an opportunity when you walk past the quad to think about Julian Abele and what he did. And by our naming this quad after him, and it'll be on all the literature of Duke from now on, we're not saying that we've solved all racial problems at Duke University or in this country. We haven't. They have a lot of racial issues that always will have to be dealt with. But hopefully it will be a symbol that the university recognizes the importance of racial equality and racial recognition and racial cooperation. And hopefully when you walk past the quad and you see his name there, you'll think about what he did to make this university what it is, giving us this beautiful campus, and just think about how important it is that we are now honoring him. So I hope everybody here recognizes we have a long way to go in racial harmony, but this is a Duke's effort to make a step and a progress forward. Many other steps have to come forward for sure, but this is an important step, and I hope everybody here recognizes that. I want to thank everybody here for what you've done to help make this possible and helping us have a celebration that I hope you all remember. You'll have been to many events on this campus, no doubt many athletic events and graduations, but I hope you'll remember this as one of the most important events you've ever been to on this campus, because it certainly will be for me. So let me thank everybody and acknowledge that we're now going to go with the Abele family, go here to have some photographs. All of you are welcome to partake of the refreshments, and hope all of you will look up at Julian Abele and realize he's looking down happily on you. Thank you.